Elena Rivera was 32 years old and earning $52,000 a year as a pediatric nurse, where her husband's family made her stand in the rain during her own mother's funeral. And what happened in the lawyer's office 48 hours later would shatter the Morgan family's carefully constructed world of privilege and deceit. The October rain fell like ice needles on Greenwood Memorial Chapel on Linden Boulevard in Queens. Elena stood outside the chapel's covered entrance, her $67 Ross dress plastered to her body, mascara streaming down her face in black rivers. Through the foggy windows, she could see Daniel's family, the Morgans of Morgan & Associates investment firm, worth a reported $52 million. Huddled together in the front rows, their designer umbrellas neatly folded, their faces twisted in barely concealed disgust. This place smells like pine sol and old flowers. Victoria Morgan, Daniel's mother, had announced when Elena tried to join them inside. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable greeting guests at the door, dear. After all, you're so good at service work. Elena had endured 7 years of their comments, their carefully worded insults wrapped in silk and delivered with champagne smiles. But today her mother lay in a $1,200 casket that had maxed out Elena's credit card, and something inside her chest felt like it was splitting apart. She remembered her mother's last words at Mount Sinai Hospital, when the breast cancer had stolen everything but her fierce brown eyes. "Mi amor, you are worth more than all their money. You remember that. And you remember, Mr. Castellanos has something for you when the time comes." Elena had assumed she meant the family lawyer would help with the funeral paperwork. Her mother had worked as a housekeeper at the Plaza Hotel for 33 years, retiring with a modest pension of $28,000 annually. She'd lived in the same two-bedroom walk-up in Jackson Heights since 1991, paying $1,100 a month for an apartment that smelled like sofrito and was filled with photographs Elena had assumed were her only inheritance. She had no idea what was waiting. "Elena, honey, you're making a scene." Daniel appeared beside her, his $3,800 Armani suit perfectly dry under the awning. His voice had that tight quality she'd come to recognize, embarrassment mixed with obligation. "Mom thinks maybe you should sit in the back, so you can slip out if you get emotional. It's my mother's funeral, Daniel." "I know, babe. I know." He glanced back toward the chapel where his sister Claire was showing his cousin something on her phone, both of them laughing behind manicured hands. "But you know how my family is. They're not comfortable with." He gestured vaguely at the modest chapel, the simple flower arrangements Elena had spent $340 on, the Hispanic families filling the wooden pews. All this, through the doorway, Elena watched Victoria lean toward Claire, her voice carrying despite the organ music. "Did you see that casket? Looks like something from a discount warehouse. I told Daniel this is what happens when you marry the help." Daniel heard it too. Elena knew he did because his jaw tightened for exactly half a second. But he said nothing, did nothing, just stood there in his perfect suit with his perfect silence, choosing them over her like he'd done 1,000 times before. "Your mother worked 3 jobs to send you to nursing school," he told her on their second date, his eyes warm with admiration. "That's incredible." Now that same sacrifice was a source of shame. Elena felt something harden in her chest. Not her heart breaking, but something stronger crystallizing in its place. She looked at Daniel, really looked at him, and saw a stranger wearing her husband's face. "I'll sit wherever I want, Daniel. It's my mother's funeral." She walked past him into the chapel, head high, rain dripping onto the carpet. The Morgans watched her like she was a stray dog that had wandered in from the street. Let them watch. Let them whisper. In 48 hours, she discovered that her mother's modest life had been hiding secrets that would rewrite everything. The black Mercedes S-Class pulled up to Greenwood Memorial Chapel at exactly 3:47 p.m., its polished exterior reflecting the gray sky like obsidian. Most of the funeral guests had already left, their umbrellas disappearing down Linden Boulevard in clusters of black and navy. The Morgans were still inside, probably calculating how quickly they could escape to their 4 o'clock tennis lesson at the country club. Elena stood by her mother's casket, one hand resting on the cool metal, When she heard the car door close with that particular sound only German engineering could produce, solid, expensive, final. The man who stepped out wore a charcoal Tom Ford suit that probably cost more than Elena's monthly salary. Mid-50s, silver hair, perfectly styled, carrying a leather briefcase that looked older than Elena but maintained with obvious care. He moved through the rain without hurrying, as if the weather wouldn't dare touch him. Mrs. Elena Rivera Morgan. His voice was crisp, professional, with the faintest trace of a Boston accent. Yes. Jonathan Caldwell and Harrison Legal. I represented your mother's estate. He extended a hand. His grip was firm, respectful. My condolences for your loss. Marisol was a remarkable woman. Behind her, Elena heard the chapel doors open. Victoria Morgan's voice carried across the parking lot. Who is that? Elena, do you know that man? Mr. Caldwell's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. The look of a man who dealt with people like the Morgans before and found them wanting. I have explicit instructions from your mother, he continued, reaching into his briefcase and withdrawing a cream-colored envelope sealed with red wax. The will must be read today, before burial. She was very specific about the timing. The will. Elena stared at the envelope. I don't understand. My mother didn't have. Oh, this is precious. Victoria had crossed the parking lot, Claire and two cousins flanking her like a designer-dressed infantry. Daniel trailed behind, his phone in his hand. Elena, sweetie, your mother was a housekeeper. What exactly do you think she left you? Her mop collection. Claire laughed, the sound sharp as breaking glass. Maybe some restaurant gift cards? I hear service workers get those as bonuses sometimes. Mr. Caldwell turned to face them, his expression neutral, but his voice dropping several degrees in temperature. And you are? Victoria Morgan, of Morgan and Associates investment firm. She said it like announcing royalty. This is my son Daniel, Elena's husband, and my daughter Claire. We're family. I see. Caldwell's tone suggested he saw quite a lot. Mrs. Rivera's instructions specify that the reading take place at my office for 32 Park Avenue South, immediately following the service. All beneficiaries and relevant parties must be present. Beneficiaries? Victoria's perfectly microbladed eyebrows rose. Mr. Caldwell, I think there's been some confusion. Elena's mother cleaned hotel rooms. I'm sure she had a lovely life, but let's not pretend there's some vast fortune hidden under the floorboards. Park Avenue South? Claire was typing into her phone. That's where Westfield Properties has their headquarters. And Rothman Capital. That's a serious address for an attorney. My firm has been there since 1987, Caldwell said mildly. He turned back to Elena. Mrs. Morgan, your mother retained our services in 1995. I've been managing her affairs for nearly 3 decades. She wanted you to hear the details today, before certain decisions become irrevocable. Elena's mind was spinning. 1995? That was the year her mother had started working at the plaza. Mr. Caldwell, I don't understand any of this. My mother lived in a walk-up. She took the bus to work. She had her reasons for living modestly. His voice softened. Reasons she wanted me to explain to you today. Shall we say 5 p.m. at my office? The reading won't take long, but I suspect the conversation afterward might. This is absurd, Victoria snapped. Daniel, we have a Henderson's cocktail party at 6. Tell your wife we don't have time for this performance. Daniel finally looked up from his phone. Elena, maybe we should just... I'll be there, Elena said, her voice stronger than she felt. At 5, Caldwell nodded, handed her a business card with an embossed logo, and walked back to his Mercedes. As he drove away, Victoria turned to Daniel with ice in her voice. If you let her waste our evening on this ridiculous charade, we'll discuss more than cocktail parties. Daniel looked at Elena, then at his mother, and Elena watched him make his choice. I'll meet you there after the Hendersons, he said, already turning away. Text me the address. The conference room at Caldwell and Harrison Legal occupied the 23rd floor of a building that overlooked Madison Square Park. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city in golden hour light, and a mahogany table could seat 16 people comfortably. Today, it held 7. Elena, Daniel, who'd arrived 20 minutes late, smelling like gin and canapes, Victoria, Claire, two Morgan cousins who'd somehow heard about the meeting, and Mr. Caldwell at the head of the table. Elena's hands were shaking. She'd hidden them in her lap for the past 10 minutes, trying to process what was happening. Her mother's lawyer worked in a building with a doorman who wore white gloves. There was original art on the walls, not prints, but actual paintings with those little brass plaques underneath. "Shall we begin?" Caldwell opened his briefcase with 2 precise clicks. He withdrew a bound document, easily 40 pages thick. The last will and testament of Marisol, Elena Rivera, executed September 15th, 2024, superseding all previous versions. "How long is this going to take?" Victoria checked her Cartier watch with theatrical annoyance. "Some of us have actual obligations." Caldwell's expression could have frozen wine. "As long as it takes, Mrs. Morgan." He turned to Elena, his voice softening. "Your mother wanted you to understand her choices. She asked me to explain the full picture before reading the specific bequests." Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. "Marisol Rivera began working with our firm in January 1995, Caldwell continued. At that time, she just started a position at the Plaza Hotel. Her wages were modest, $8.50 per hour initially. But she came to us with $17,000 in savings accumulated over 15 years of work as a home health aide." Claire snorted. "This is the big revelation? $17,000. That was the beginning, Miss Morgan. Not the end." Caldwell slid a document across the table to Elena. "Your mother had cared for a man named Richard Chun during his recovery from a stroke in 1994. Mr. Chun was grateful for her dedication. We learned she'd been saving money. He offered advice. He suggested she invest in a small real estate partnership he was forming, rehabilitating rent-controlled buildings in Brooklyn." Elena stared at the paper. It showed an initial investment of $15,000 in something called Chun Development Partners, LLC, dated February 1995. That partnership, Caldwell continued, proved extremely successful. By 2003, your mother's share was worth $340,000. She reinvested the profits. The room had gone very quiet. Daniel was leaning forward now, his phone forgotten. Victoria's mouth had thinned to a line. "In 1998, while working at the Plaza, your mother met a woman named Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, who was staying at the hotel during a medical conference. They became friends. Dr. Okonkwo was launching a medical supply company focused on affordable equipment for underserved hospitals. She needed investors." Another document slid across the table. Marisol invested $50,000 in MedReach Solutions. That company went public in 2007. Your mother's shares were worth $2.3 million at their peak. She sold half and held the rest. Elena's vision was blurring. This couldn't be real. Her mother had taken an M60 bus to work every day. She clipped coupons. They'd shopped at discount grocery stores where you bagged your own food. In 2006, Caldwell's voice was steady, methodical. Your mother was working a private nursing shift for a young man recovering from a car accident. His name was Marcus Webb. He was 24, brilliant, and working on something he called cloud-based payment processing. He needed seed money. Traditional investors wouldn't touch him. Too young, too risky. Victoria made a sound like a strangled laugh. "You're not saying..." Marisol invested $75,000 in Paystream Technologies. Mr. Webb's company was acquired by Visa in 2019 for $847 million. Your mother's stake was worth $18.6 million after taxes. The number hung in the air like a grenade. Elena couldn't breathe. $18.6 million. Her mother, who'd saved every rubber band and reused aluminum foil, who'd worked 12-hour shifts well past retirement age, who'd died in a hospital bed worrying about Elena's credit card debt. The total estate, Caldwell said, pulling out one final document, including real estate holdings, investment accounts, and liquid assets, is valued at $34.7 million as of yesterday's market close. Victoria shot to her feet. "That's impossible. This is fraud. Daniel, this is obviously fraud." "It's meticulously documented," Caldwell replied coolly. 3 decades of investment records, tax returns, and legal filings. All perfectly legitimate. All perfectly hidden because Marisol Rivera understood something important. Wealth changes how people treat you. She wanted to live her life on her own terms. She wanted to know who loved her for herself. His eyes moved deliberately to Daniel, who'd gone pale as paper. And now, Caldwell said, opening the will to a bookmark page, she wants her daughter to have the same freedom. Elena's tears were falling freely now, but she wasn't sure if they were grief or rage or something else entirely. Her mother had been a multimillionaire, had watched the Morgans mock her, demean her, treat her like a servant at every holiday dinner, every family gathering, every single time their worlds collided. And she'd said nothing, just smiled and served them her homemade tamales and let them think exactly what they wanted to think. Mr. Caldwell reached into his briefcase and withdrew 5 cream-colored envelopes, each sealed with the same red wax as the will itself. He arranged them in a precise line across the mahogany table, reading names from left to right. Victoria Morgan, Claire Morgan, Daniel Morgan, Robert Morgan, Patricia Morgan Stiles. What is this? Victoria's voice had lost its usual command, replaced by something tight and uncertain. Your mother, Caldwell said to Elena, never breaking eye contact, believed in the complete truth. She left specific bequests for each member of your husband's family. Given their presence at today's reading, she wanted them delivered personally. He slid the first envelope to Victoria. Mrs. Victoria Morgan, for your years of hospitality toward Marisol Rivera and her daughter, you are hereby bequeathed the sum of $1, legal tender of the United States. The silence was absolute. Claire's mouth fell open. Daniel's uncle Robert made a choking sound. $1. Victoria's face had gone scarlet. This is insulting. There's more. Caldwell's voice remained professionally neutral. Your envelope also contains documentation that Mrs. Rivera compiled over 7 years. Specifically, record from the Westchester Women's Charitable Foundation, where you serve as treasurer. It appears that between 2019 and 2024, approximately $127,000 in foundation funds were used for personal expenses. He pulled out a paperclip stack of receipts. The Golden Door Spa, $8,400. Bergdorf Goodman, multiple purchases totaling $23,000. A charity retreat to Turks and Caicos that cost $31,000 but involved no charitable activities. Marisol worked as a server at 2 of those charity galas. She kept very good records. Victoria snatched the envelope, her hands trembling. Inside were photocopies of credit card statements, expense reports with Victoria's own signature, photographs time-stamped and dated. Her face went from red to white. She was spying on me? She was documenting fraud, Caldwell corrected. She's included a note suggesting you have 30 days to make full restitution before these documents are shared with the Foundation's board and the IRS. He slid the second envelope to Claire. Miss Claire Morgan, you also receive $1, along with records of gambling debts totaling $67,000 across 3 Atlantic City casinos, currently in collections. Also documented, 5 personal loans from Elena's salary, money you borrowed for emergencies and never repaid. Total, $8,300. Claire grabbed the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were casino statements, collection letters, and text messages, screenshots of conversations where she'd promised Elena she'd pay her back next month, going back 3 years. How did she? Claire's voice cracked. This is private information. Elena's phone automatically backed up to a cloud service, Caldwell explained. Marisol had access. She wanted her daughter to see exactly who she'd been helping. The third envelope went to Daniel's Uncle Robert. Mr. Robert Morgan, $1. Plus documentation that you've been collecting rent on 3 properties in Queens while reporting them as vacant on your tax returns. Total unreported income, approximately $340,000 over 6 years. Robert's face turned purple. I have an accountant. This is defamation. It's public record cross-referenced with private investigation, Caldwell replied. Marisol hired a forensic accountant in 2022. Everything in your envelope has been verified and documented. There's also a note indicating these documents will be forwarded to the IRS if you contest any portion of this will. Patricia Morgenstiles, Daniel's aunt, received her envelope forth. $1. An evidence of 3 extramarital affairs, including one with your sister-in-law's brother. Marisol suggests you might want to tell your husband yourself before he receives the anonymous letter she's arranged to be mailed in 60 days if you cause any trouble for Elena. Patricia looked like she might vomit. Finally, Caldwell turned to Daniel. The last envelope sat in front of him, unopened. Mr. Daniel Morgan. $1. His voice dropped. And a letter from your mother-in-law. She asked that you read it privately. But she wanted you to know she documented every time you stood silent while your family humiliated your wife. Every holiday dinner where you chose their approval over Elena's dignity. Every moment you were too weak to defend the woman who loved you. Daniel's hand hovered over the envelope, but didn't take it. The remainder of the estate, Caldwell said, turning back to Elena, all $34.7 million in assets, properties, and investments, passes entirely to Elena Rivera Morgan, with one condition. She must make all decisions regarding the estate independently, without consultation or input from any member of the Morgan family, for a period of no less than 1 year. Victoria stood so violently her chair crashed backward. We'll contest this. This is extortion. This is ironclad, Caldwell interrupted. And if you contest it, every document in those envelopes gets released to the appropriate authorities immediately. Marisol Rivera spent 3 years with our firm's litigation team, making certain of it. Elena stared at the envelopes scattered across the table like grenades that had already detonated. Her mother, her quiet, careful mother who'd smiled through every insult, had built a nuclear weapon and left Elena the detonator. The conference room had emptied of Morgans like a building clearing during a fire alarm. Victoria had left first, her Hermes bag clutched to her chest like armor, muttering about lawyers and slander lawsuits. Claire followed, mascara streaked and silent. Uncle Robert had actually ran, his footsteps echoing down the marble hallway. Patricia left without a word, her envelope shoved deep in her purse like evidence at a crime scene. Daniel had lingered by the door, his envelope still unopened on the table. He'd looked at Elena once, really looked at her, and whatever he saw in her face made him turn away. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like an ending. Now it was just Elena and Mr. Caldwell in the golden afternoon light, the city sprawling below them like a kingdom she'd never known she'd inherited. "There's one more thing," Caldwell said softly. He reached into his briefcase and withdrew a letter. Not an envelope, just a single piece of cream-colored stationery folded once, covered in her mother's careful cursive handwriting. The kind of writing that came from someone who'd learned English as a second language and treated every word like it mattered. "She wrote this 6 weeks ago," he said. "Asked me to give it to you after everything else. After you'd seen what she'd built. After you understood." Elena's hands were shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. The paper smelled faintly of her mother's perfume. Anais, $19 at CVS, the only luxury she'd ever openly claimed. "Mi amor, mi Elena. If you are reading this, I am gone, and you have just learned that your mother was a liar. Not about love, never about love, but about money, about power, about the life I could have given you. I am sorry for that. I am sorry I served them tamales at Christmas while they called me the help. Sorry I smiled when Victoria made jokes about my accent. Sorry I let them think I was small. But I am not sorry for staying quiet, because I needed to see clearly. And what I saw, mi hija, broke my heart." Elena's vision blurred. She could hear her mother's voice in every word, that particular rhythm of Spanish syntax underneath English words. "I watched your husband choose them over you. Not once, not twice. 1,000 small moments when he could have said, 'That's my wife,' and instead said nothing. When he could have walked out with you and instead stayed for dessert. When he could have been a man and instead was a boy afraid of his mother. You loved him anyway. That is who you are, my beautiful daughter with her father's huge heart. But I did not raise you to be small for someone else's comfort." The words swam on the page. Elena remembered Christmas 2021, when Victoria had asked if the maid could serve the appetizers because Elena knew where everything was. Daniel had laughed. Actually laughed. "I leave you everything, Elena. Not because money is important. I lived 65 years proving it is not, but because freedom is important. Because choice is important. Because you deserve someone who protects you, not someone who watches you be hurt and does nothing. The apartments in Brooklyn, I bought them thinking of you. The medical supply stocks, I invested remembering how you cried when you couldn't save that child in the ICU, thinking maybe you could start a clinic someday. The tech investments, I chose companies that help people because that is what my daughter does. She helps. All of it is yours. The houses you can sell, the money you can spend, the power you can use. But the most important thing I leave you is permission. Permission to walk away from anyone who makes you feel small. Permission to choose yourself. I am sorry I never confronted them. Sorry I let you face them alone. But I wanted you to see, when they thought I had nothing, they gave me nothing. No kindness. No respect. Just their cruelty. Now you know what they are. Now you know what you're worth. Love yourself as fiercely as I loved you. Mommy." The letter fell from Elena's hands. She was sobbing now. Huge, gasping sobs that came from somewhere deep in her chest where grief and rage and love had tangled into something too big for her body to hold. Mr. Caldwell slid a box of tissues across the table and politely looked out the window, giving her privacy in the only way that mattered. Outside, somewhere in the city below, the Morgans were making phone calls to their lawyers, their accountants, their therapists. They were blaming Elena, cursing Marisol, already rewriting history to make themselves the victims. But up here, in this room where the truth had finally been spoken, Elena held her mother's letter and understood. Marisol Rivera had given her daughter the one thing money couldn't buy. She'd given her the truth, and with it, the power to choose what came next. 3 weeks after the funeral, the first dominoes began to fall. The Westchester Women's Charitable Foundation received an anonymous package containing 247 pages of financial documentation, bank statements, credit card receipts, expense reports with Victoria Morgan's signature, photographs time-stamped and geotagged showing charity retreats that were actually luxury vacations. By the end of business on Thursday, Victoria had been placed on administrative leave. By Friday afternoon, the State Attorney General's office had opened a formal investigation into charitable fund misappropriation. Elena learned about it from the New York Times notification on her phone. Westchester Charity Executive Faces Fraud Probe. The article included a quote from the foundation's board chairman expressing deep concern and commitment to transparency. It did not include Victoria's frantic voicemails, 14 of them, each one escalating from imperious demands to barely coherent rage. "You did this," the last message hissed. "You and your scheming dead mother. We'll destroy you for this." Elena deleted them without listening to the end. On Tuesday, a gossip blog called Manhattan Social Diary published a blind item. Which socialite daughter of an investment firm founder has been banned from 3 Atlantic City casinos for unpaid markers totaling close to 6 figures? Sources say collection agencies are now involved, and Daddy's checkbook might not save her this time. By Wednesday morning, everyone knew it was Claire. Her Instagram, carefully curated with rooftop brunches and Hampton sunsets, went dark. Her friends, the ones who'd laughed at Elena's $67 dress, stopped returning calls. The Junior League quietly removed her from their spring gala committee. Elena saw Claire once, at a Starbucks on 3rd Avenue. Claire looked thin, hollowed out, wearing sunglasses indoors. Their eyes met. Claire opened her mouth as if to speak, then seemed to reconsider the value of words against what had already been said. She left her latte untouched on the counter and walked out. Uncle Robert's collapse was more dramatic. Federal investigators raided his real estate office on a Monday morning, carrying boxes of files to unmarked vehicles while news cameras rolled. The IRS had apparently found discrepancies between reported income and actual rental receipts on multiple properties. The investigation was ongoing, but his lawyer's statement included phrases like full cooperation and confident in complete vindication. the kind of language that signaled guilt wrapped in legal letterhead. Morgan & Associates investment firm saw 3 major clients withdraw their portfolios within 2 weeks. The financial press speculated about family troubles and reputation management issues. Daniel's father, the firm's founder, suffered a stress-induced cardiac episode that landed him in Lenox Hill Hospital for 4 days. Through all of it, Daniel called, texted, showed up at Elena's building until the doorman she'd tipped $200 started turning him away. Finally, he caught her leaving Mount Sinai after a shift, exhausted in scrubs that smelled like antiseptic and other people's emergencies. Elena, please, just 5 minutes. She stopped, not because she wanted to hear him, but because exhaustion had made her too tired to run. I'm sorry, he said. The words tumbled out fast, desperate. I should have defended you. I know that, but I was trying to keep the peace. You don't know what it's like growing up in that family. The pressure, the expectations. I thought if I could just manage both sides, if I could keep everyone happy. I needed you at my mother's funeral, Elena said quietly. Not explanations 3 weeks later. I needed my husband to stand next to me while his mother called me the help. I needed you to walk out with me when they made me stand in the rain. I needed you to choose me once. Just once. I'm choosing you now. Now I'm rich. The words came out flat, factual. Now I have $34.7 million, and your family is imploding, and suddenly you remember I'm your wife. Where were you when I had nothing but grief and a maxed-out credit card? His face crumpled. Elena, I love you. You love the idea of me. The nurse who'd be grateful. The poor girl who'd never leave, because where would she go? She pulled an envelope from her bag, not cream-colored with red wax, just plain white from an attorney's office. Separation papers. My lawyer will contact yours. You're not serious. I'm completely serious. You had 7 years to be my husband. You chose to be their son instead. She pressed the envelope into his hands. My mother saw it. She tried to show me. Now I finally understand. She walked away, and this time he didn't follow. Behind her, she heard something that might have been a sob, or might have been traffic noise, or might have been the sound of a man realizing that silence had a price he couldn't afford to pay. Elena kept walking. She had a life to build, a mother to honor, and absolutely nothing left to prove to people who'd never valued her anyway. 1 year later, Elena stood in the lobby of Rivera Medical Center in Jackson Heights, watching the rain stream down floor-to-ceiling windows. Behind her, a portrait of her mother hung in a place of honor. Marisol in her Plaza Hotel uniform, smiling that quiet smile that now Elena understood had hidden mountains. The estate had revealed itself slowly, like opening nested boxes. $6.4 million in carefully diversified investments. Rental properties in Brooklyn and New Jersey generating $42,000 monthly. 17% ownership in MedReach Solutions, still thriving. And letters, dozens of them, from families Marisol had helped over 30 years. Rent paid quietly. Medical bills covered anonymously. College tuition for a housekeeper's daughter. A retired doorman's surgery. All documented, all deliberate. Elena had used it to build something her mother would recognize. The Marisol Rivera Compassion Fund. Free clinic services for uninsured patients. Nursing school scholarships for immigrant children. Exactly what a woman who'd saved the world $20 at a time would have wanted. The Morgans had faded into irrelevance. Victoria's foundation settlement made page 16. Claire had moved to Phoenix. Daniel's divorce papers arrived via courier and signed by Elena for 6 months before she finally bothered. Outside, the November rain fell steady and clean, washing the streets new. Elena touched her mother's portrait once, then walked forward into the center that bore her name, built not on silence, but on the thunderous legacy of a woman who'd known exactly when to speak. From funeral humiliation to $34.7 million empire, Elena honored her mother by becoming unstoppable. Share this story if you believe in the power of patience and perfect revenge. What would you build with a second chance? Comment below.